And we have breaking news now from the UNH campus, where pro-Palestine protesters are now being threatened with arrest.
So we need to get right out to the scene. That is where WMUR's Amani Fleming is there monitoring all of this. Amani, get us up to speed. What are you seeing? What's happening there right now?
Monica, Steve, at this point, things have escalated very quickly here at UNH. Things have become violent between protesters and between campus police. The campus police are wearing some riot gear. They've got shields. Students and some of the people who are here, we're told, are not students. They're starting to throw things at police. We can see some action happening right in front of us. Police are starting to chase some of the protesters here. A lot of shouting, a lot of yelling from both sides at this point. Police are telling students to back away from campus. They've been told 3 times now over the intercom since we've been here to displace. They've been told that their permit to be here to protest has been revoked. We've been speaking to some of the students who tell us they do not feel safe right now. They tell us they don't feel safe because of the protesters, but also because of the police presence here. I've heard students telling me both things at this point. Again, we're told that there are some people here who are not affiliated with the university. Taking a look right now, I mean, we're seeing things escalate, continuing to escalate firsthand. Protesters have been chanting "Free Palestine," "No more money for Israel." They've been chanting "Resistance is occupied when people are occupied." Again, over the loudspeaker, UNH police were alerting protesters that they have been asked to leave. They've been asked to disperse. We're told that their permit has been revoked. We're also told that protesters who tried to put up tents had been told they were in violation of their permit to be here. So again, it's a very chaotic scene right now. There are lots of chanting happening. Again, it has become violent. We've seen protesters fighting back. Some of the pushes from law enforcement here, we can see they're decked out in their gear. Very tense from both sides. Monica, Steve, it's overall a very chaotic scene, and we're monitoring things here at this point.
And Amani, do we have a sense at this point why that permit to protest has been revoked?
Sure, Monica. So as far as I know, I have spoken to someone affiliated with the university here at UNH. They tell me that putting up tents, protesters who were trying to put up tents and start an encampment here, they were told that that was in violation of their permit to be here to protest. And so that, from what I have gathered, is the main reason that things have escalated the way that we're seeing happening right in front of us.
All right, so Amani, we just saw that one person taken off by authorities in handcuffs. As we see the police here, give us a sense. Obviously, we saw state police, looks like local police too. What is the number of protesters compared to the number of police here? What are you seeing, and kind of give us the bigger picture of what these crowds feel like?
Sure, Steve. So that's exactly right. State police is here. We're also seeing Durham police, and then UNH police are here as well. In terms of people who are actively protesting, people who are actively shouting their chants directed towards police, I would say that there seem to be a few more, I'd argue a handful more of protesters in comparison to law enforcement here. If you look right here in front of you, we're seeing some people now being taken out of the property, taken out of the facility. People are cheering for that. We're seeing, again, multiple people who, their hands are tied behind their backs. Police are escorting them out. You can see on the back of their uniforms there that says UNH police. So it's clear that a lot of law enforcement are here. But these protesters, from what I can see, are not backing down. They are not, they're not stopping their chants. They don't seem to feel too threatened. But again, I have spoken to students here, to people here standing, watching this all happen. They tell me they don't feel safe here right now, whether that's safe from the protesters themselves or whether that's because they're looking at some of this gear that these law enforcement officials have on. So it's just a very intense scene overall.
And we did see police, Amani, with that live look, dismantling some of those tents and escorting people away. As you said, it appeared in handcuffs. Give us a sense of how many tents were set up, and if you had seen or spoken with anyone who was not affiliated with the university there.
Sure, Monica. So I did see just when we got here about literally 20 minutes ago, there were only about 2 tents set up, but it looked like there were more trying to be set up. It looked like some of these protesters were starting to gather those materials to start setting more up. Again, that is the main reason. UNH officials tell me they were in violation of their permit, but overall, I really only saw 2 to 3 tents set up. A lot of flags, Palestinian flags are being waved. You can hear for yourself, the chants are not stopping. There was an area set up around the protesters. They were, protecting themselves, linking arms. They had some of those white fold-up tables stationed around them, sort of blocking them from anyone who's trying to come in. We can clearly see that didn't really work. We can now see state police are dragging some of those materials they had set up, some of those tables they had set up. So really, police are trying to de-escalate this and really get these people off of the property at this point.
All right, this is the scene on the flagship campus of the University of New Hampshire system. This clash between police and protesters happening live. Amani Fleming there on the scene. We are monitoring this for you. We're going to have much more right after this.